Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in today in this Educated Mindset Mental Toughness session. I'm Erika Twani, and I work with Dr. Paul Miller and Dr. Bennett Kallick on the K-12 equity team. I'm introducing this panel on behalf of our Global Minded CEO, Carol Carter. Global Minded creates a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, and underrepresented populations into education, economic mobility, and leadership pipeline through connections to role models, mentors, internships, and jobs. We have these equity events monthly, and we have a daily newsletter and an annual conference, which will be next year, June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in Denver. And now our registration is already opened. So finally, we invite you all to our Inclusive Leadership Awards ceremony, which is at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, November 3rd. We will record the session and then share it with you following this event. And now it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce my colleague, Dr. Paul Miller, and this outstanding panel. Dr. Miller.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. I'm Dr. Paul Miller, current CEO and principal at Green Tech High Charter School in Albany, New York. But we have some interesting, good brothers here that, as you all know, we have them introduce themselves. We're going to give everybody 60 seconds to introduce themselves. I have two brothers of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated on with us as well. So I have to shout out my fraternity brothers on here as well. Gotta show some love for the Omega Shield. With that being said, I'm going to start with Brother Keith L. Brown and let him introduce himself.
GOODJOB, good job, good job. I said GOODJOB. Good job, good job. Keith L. Brown, known nationally and internationally as Mr. Impossible. So honored to be here with Dr. Purposeful Paul Miller and all of the participants for this empowerment session on definitely being tough-minded and just building our inner and outer fortitude. I'm a professional speaker. I'm an educational consultant. I'm a COVID recovery coach. I travel to school districts nationally and internationally, working with diversity, inclusion, equity, college and career readiness, leadership. And I'm also a director of external affairs in the Georgia Senate. So I'm just honored to be here. And I gave you the GOODJOB, good job, because as servant leaders, that's what we do every day. I'm honored to be on this platform.
Thank you, good brother. Next, we have my other fraternity brother, Olus Holder Jr. Can you give us a little introductions? Tell us who you are, why you're here. Give us about 60 seconds.
Greetings, everyone, and Dr. Miller, Erika. My name is Olus Holder. I'm a byproduct of Chicago Public School Systems, Southside Chicago, Inglewood Community, graduate of Inglewood High School. I have the privilege now to serve as executive pastor of Fallbrook Church, and a very progressive community-based church that definitely embraces this K through 12 equity. And what makes us unique from a church perspective is that you could have an 18-month-old child on our campus, and we have K through 12 charter school. And I think what separates us from any other church probably in America, we have a partnership with Lone Star College, where the Fallbrook Church has financed a state-of-the-art facility. Lone Star College, the second largest community college in Texas, has designed it. They totally operated independent from the church, but we financed it. So I'm here because I believe in education, and definitely coming out of inner city school, again, a byproduct out of Inglewood High School on the south side of Chicago. That shows you that no matter where you are, what type of environment you are, if you're the point, y'all will hear me mention discipline and perseverance, you can do great things.
Thank you. And last but not least, he just popped on. Now this brother's definitely showing mental toughness because he's been busy but he decided that he would stop what he was doing and join us today, which we're so appreciative for. Dr. SaJade Miller, could you tell us who you are, what do you do? Give us about 60 seconds.
All right, the Dr. Miller, thank you so much for having me. Yes, this is important because anytime we have the opportunity and the privilege to be amongst greatness like the members that are on this panel, I do want to make sure that I can attend. SaJade Miller, Superintendent of Rocketship Public Schools, Texas, nonprofit charter school that seeks to really tap into the greatness that already exists in the community, do things with them and enhance the greatness that is within, celebrate the rich cultural capital, and elevate the voices by creating a community school and communities with the highest needs. So super excited about opening our first campus in Fort Worth, Texas. If you are from the area, you know all about Stop 6. Those of us who are from there call that the capital of the great city. So honored to be here doing the work in the 12th largest city in the nation and top 5 fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. So honored to be here to share and most importantly, learn from the other gentlemen who are on the panel.
I appreciate you guys. Erika, you want to tell us any more about yourself too? Because we're going to loop you into this conversation. We got a lot of testosterone on here. We need some balance. So let's, so give us some balance. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I'm Erika Twani. I'm, besides being part of this wonderful K-12 equity team at Global Minded, I'm also the author of Becoming Einstein's Teacher, a book that just launched this year that includes all the things that we're discussing here today. And also, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Learning One-to-One Foundation. We work with teachers around the world, training them to make sure that they can provide the best for their students.
Thank you. So we're going to hop right into this dialogue, good people. So I'm going to ask you guys a question, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but it's going to be a question. And I guess I can give my opinion on it too. Do you all agree or disagree, and why not? This is the softest generation that I've ever met. Like, I can't, like, with our young people, and I guess I'm going to try not to give my opinion, but too many times we're seeing young people that are willing to give up and not, they see the sprint and they're looking for the immediate gratification versus willing to participate in the marathon. And so I'm gonna start with, do you guys agree or disagree that this is the softest generation ever, and why or why not? Anybody, I'll throw it out there. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I would love to jump in right there. I would love to jump in if I may, Brother Miller. I disagree with that statement. I disagree with that statement from the standpoint, I believe this is the softest generation of parents that we've ever seen. I believe this is the softest generation of adults that we have seen. And I believe as adults, we have coddled and we have basically placed children and young people in a position where now they are soft, but it is not due to anything that they have done. It is not their own doing, okay? We have been able, this generation. I remember growing up where resilience was a must in my family. Resilience was a must. Discipline was a must. Perseverance was a must. Respect was a must. And we've lost a lot of that in future generations. And so the generation we see today, many of them, like I said, many that I serve, many of the children and young people that I serve in school districts across the country, they have been coddled. And so they're coddled through the video games. They're coddled through social media. Problem solving skills are not as important because they can now go and Google many of the answers. Communicating effectively is not as important because now we allow them to text. And so while this generation might be the softest ever, it is at the foot of the adults who continuously perpetuate allowing them to be the softest generation. So I definitely want to put it in perspective. As an educational consultant, and that's what we do, we train and we guide parents and teachers to come up out of, that bondage, okay, that we call mental softness, to help our young people grow. But definitely it falls at the foot of the adults, and it is passed down to our children and young people.
So Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, right? And so I'll name that I think it's always important that we allow history to catch up with the definitions and our perceptions of labels that we may or may not place on individuals. And what I mean by that is, the book I read often, there's nothing new under the sun. For everything, there's a season, and things come around and around and around. And I remember, we can look through historically, if there's any sociologists amongst us, they said things about the 60s generation. They said things about the kids of the 70s. Oh man, the 80s generation, they were a force to be reckoned with. And then 90s and so on and so forth. And so I don't necessarily, ascribe to the belief that this is a sophist generation. What I do think is that the definition of tenacity, toughness, and resilient is still defined by those who are in positions of power, which are in the generation ahead of the youth that we're talking about. I think the definition of mental toughness back in the day was keeping quiet, sucking it up, and persevering at all costs. You hear terms about toxic masculinity. You hear things about, in the household, how many times have you heard the saying, well, don't tell family business, and people are forced to endure some of the most horrible and heinous things. Whereas now, there's been a shift to where really mental resilience and mental toughness is really about your ability to communicate where you are, who you are, where you stand. Some might define that as soft, some might define that as resilient, some may define that as adaptive. So I think it's incumbent upon us and leaders, particularly in the ed space and any other sort of faith-based space, to really understand and calibrate our definition of mental toughness and the counter to that, which is softness, right? So that's kind of a non-answer, Dr. Miller, so don't beat me up on that. But I think the answer does not yet exist. And I think time will tell how well we transition responsibly as the older generation, I hate to say the term older, to really understand and embrace the mental and the reality of the youth that are growing up in an age that is foreign to us. Even myself, it is foreign to us. The exposure and the things that they're dealing with is definitely different than what we dealt with.
Okay, interesting perspective. Now, Brother Holder, let me build upon what Dr. Miller was saying, and I'm gonna ask you to define what's your definition of mental toughness. What does that mean to you? What does that look like?
To be honest with you, I agree with Brother Brown and also Dr. Miller as well. And however, I'm coming more so from the perspective of, definitely being on the pastoral realm. The deterioration of the family, and particularly with a father there. I think definitely a father brings one side of more toughness that Brother Brown is talking about when it comes to parenting. But then I understand that toughness in the way that I grew up in Inglewood High School, that was, man, you get paddled, you suck it up, you don't cry. I don't subscribe to that today. I think today with these young people, you have to get to know them. Definitely they come from different contexts, but I believe discipline and perseverance is the key. And to me, that's not predicated on being able to be quote, quote, tough like an old school, like I grew up. I'm 1974 graduate. This is 2020. I think we have to encourage these young people. Discipline doesn't matter what type of mindset you have. Perseverance can transcend any type of mindset. So I wouldn't say it's a softer generation. I think we have to empower them with discipline, with perseverance, but in a loving, compassionate way. We have to get to know them, train them, model that for them. And I think that's probably where Brother Brown is saying with the parenting probably is not modeling those things. And then from what Dr. Miller is saying, we can't approach them like you would approach me in 74 when it was, boy, you're going to get beat, you're going to get paddled, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you see it through that way. So I think it's a combination between the two, but I believe discipline and perseverance and empowering these young people and encouraging them. And it doesn't matter whether they are in Bel Air, Houston, Bel Air is a kind of affluent place, or River Oaks, or if they're in the hood, 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, where we are here. And perseverance and endurance can help each one be, quote, quote, mentally tough, if you want to use that type of terminology. I don't really use that type of terminology, but I understand where you're coming from, Dr. Miller.
Erika, what's your definition of mental toughness? We can't hear you.
There you go. I'll go in the lines of Dr. Holder. Besides perseverance, I would add resilience, which is very similar. But there is one caveat here. You know, we say that we must support our students and we must do it in a loving way, but there is a caveat of practice. So in the studies of Dr. Anders Ericsson from the University of Florida, he found out that we need 10,000 hours of practice to be an expert on anything, right? So our students are 16,800 hours, K through 12, practicing to sit down and follow instructions from our teachers. That's it. That's all they do for 16,800 hours. That's way much more than they need to be an expert on anything. So they become experts on that. So when do they have time to plan, to take action, to practice all this development of this resilience, of this commitment to what they want in life, right? They never had it. Whereas if we give them the opportunity, and that's why we're gathering leaders here to make sure that everyone understands that there's a need for us to make sure that we allow our students to practice those skills in the safety of the school environment, coached by their teachers, so they can fail, they can practice, they can stand up and fail again, and make sure that at the end of the day, they grow up mentally tough when they leave school, with enough practice to tell that they are experts and they will, whatever they want in life, they'll be able to reach, because they are mentally tough, because they have resilience, because they have the growth mindset necessary to do so.
So I think I'm gonna play the antithesis here a little bit, because everybody here is being kind of nice and they're being, oh, I love students and I love kids and all that stuff that we're supposed to say because there's people watching, right? But so Erika's like, uh-oh, where's he going? So so at the end of the day, here's the thing. When we have kids, and I deal with kids every day, right? And you all do in some form or fashion. I don't have too many kids that you could walk up to and you could smack one of them in the face and they're not going to try to smack you back, whether it's a kid or it's an adult or anybody. So as a physical aggression or physically tough, there's not too many of our kids who are going to allow that. But however, when life smacks too many of them, or let's use grades as a factor, we got kids who you know, they've struggled, or for whatever reason. Now these kids who are physically tough have struggled a lot of their life too. So they're walking around the neighborhoods and they're dealing with all kinds of things, and they have to be physically tough. But somehow they're not learning that they need to be mentally tough, because when school smacks them in the face and they can't finish an assignment, or they don't want to sit down, or they don't want to do this, or they don't want to do that, too often you see kids giving up. So you see kids taking the easy route. Oh, it's okay just not to do it, and accepting the failure. And failure is only when you stop trying. And so these are kids who are stopping trying. And we see it so many times. And this is the fight that we're taking on. So I'm going to argue here and say that we have to figure out, because this generation is a lot softer than you guys are giving credit for mentally. Physically, you know, it's not going down like that. But mentally, I'm going to argue that they're a lot softer than you guys are giving credit for. And we got to call a spade, and we got to figure out how to help retrain their thoughts. So I guess I'm going to put that in a question.
You know, Dr. Miller,
go ahead.
Let me say this. Now, when I say persevere, or like Erika said, resiliency, that comes with pressure now. You know, you have to challenge them in the midst of that to develop their mental toughness. You know, but you're dealing with a different generation type of child. You know, so you cannot use the same tactics or practice with me being a 1970 to 74 high school guy to a 2024 grad. I mean, you have to use different methodology,
Right.
you know, and hopefully the same end result would come. But no, you have to press them, but not break them. You know, you have to strategize. You have to Rubik's Cube it, you know, because an African-American kid is one thing, an Anglo kid is another, you got a Hispanic another, you got an Asian another. So you can't deal with them because they come from different cultures and different backgrounds. Some have fathers and mothers, some just only have a father, some have a mother. So it's a challenge. I agree, it's a challenge, and it falls upon education, it falls upon the church as well, particularly from the African-American side. The church is very integral in our lives to take the time and be disciplined to not treat each child the same. And so we need more of you. We need more of Erika. We need more of Dr. Miller. We need more of Brother Browns. And I think that's why we fall short. And so that's why really, if they weak, it's weak because we don't have a big enough village for them. We don't have enough people stepping up who may not have children to empower these children.
Right. No,
Love that.
No, discount you, you're right. They are kind of weak. I mean, you know, weak as far as being able to persevere through difficult times, through valley experiences. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but you know, but no, we pressing them. We pressing them.
I agree. So how do we
in there, Brother Miller?
Let me ask this, because this part of this question. So same topic. So how do we get kids to lean into a fear and face mental challenges the way they approach being physically challenged? So
Okay.
how do we get them? Give me that, Brother Brown.
Man, I love that. And see, I believe that we all agree. We're just talking about the methodology and how we go about it. But I believe we agree. For example, I do agree that this is a soft generation. However, the blame or the responsibility and the accountability has to be placed on the adults, on those who are working with them and molding them every day. And that starts with me as well. So let me just say this. I start from a place of this word here, compassion. And I love what Brother Holder said, compassion. So I take off the C-O-M and then we have passion. And then I break that word down, Brother Miller, pass I on. What do you pass I on every day? Because Brother Miller, I know how you deal with the young men you work with and lead every day. You do it with love, you do it with discipline. You have you have zero tolerance for disrespect. That's what I'm talking about. When I go into a school district, I have zero tolerance for disrespect. So let me give you an example. I was in a school district recently. I walked into the assembly. Young men were cursing. And I had teachers and the administrators coming up to me saying, "We apologize, Mr. Brown, for the disrespect." And when I got into the faculty meeting, I said, really, you should have been apologizing to the young people because that's allowed to go on every single day. So the fact that I could come in a couple of minutes and say, when I say 17, that means silence. Everyone sit up, heads up, back straight, eyes front, because there's a certain expectation that they have from adults. They have an expectation that we should come in and provide structure and discipline. Young people want discipline. They want structure. They want to lead into their fears. They want to be mentally tough. But once again, we do not regulate that. We fall into, and I know a lot of it is systematic. I know a lot of rules and regulations and things of that nature. But let me tell you, I want to just shift gears a little bit because there's a danger here to both Brother Millers. There's a danger here, Empowered Erika, Brother Honorable Holder. Here's the danger, and I want to point this out, and I do not want us to lose this. The danger is this. I'm building them to be mentally tough, but I don't want to dehumanize them. And what I mean by that is when it comes to the young Black men that I serve across the country, Black and brown boys, it seems as if the system wants them to be physically tough, but not mentally tough. But their white and Asian counterparts that I work with across the country, they want them to be mentally tough. So let me give you an example of that. You know, you can persevere as long as you're an athlete. You can be mentally tough, but not mentally tough in the classroom. And so then you have what you call hypocrisy. Okay, you have a level of hypocrisy there. So what I'm saying when I say stop dehumanizing them, we still live in a world that teaches young Black and brown boys that real men don't cry. And how can they be mentally tough if they're not allowed to cry? How can they be mentally tough if they're not allowed to show emotions? So then what happens is all of this anger and fear is built up on the inside of them. And the lid is on, and then it's like shaking up a bottle of soda, right? If you take the top off, it just explodes. That's what's happening with young Black and brown boys in America today. We are telling them in many of our own communities that real men don't cry. We're dehumanizing them, but that's not the message that the white young men that I serve are getting, or the Asian or the Native American young men. That's not the message they're getting. So once again, in order for them to lean into fear, we're going to have to allow them to express themselves, to deal with their emotions, to make mistakes, and then we're going to have to coach and train them on how to deal with them. We can't coddle them, and when they make a mistake, we can't reward them. We can't reward bad behavior. And the last thing I'll say on this is this: the same system that tells me not to discipline them, not to give them structure, not to help them persevere is the same one that's building more prisons than schools in America to do that for them.
Man, that's drop the mic moment. That's good stuff, Brother Brown. SaJade, so we heard that from Brother Brown, but I want to be a little personal for a second, ask you, because you're successful in your own right. So when the lights, cameras go off and professionally, there's something that we all struggle with. So would you care to share something that you struggle with, and how have you overcame those obstacles? Like, talk to us, give us an insight on SaJade's mindset.
Yeah, I think the biggest tragedy in life is public success and private failure. That's not mine. That's from Brother Thomas El Shalom. And what that really meant to me is as I was on this journey, high school principal at a flagship school in a district of 90,000 students, at 29 years old, right? Middle school principal before that, assistant superintendent in my 30s. There was working on my doctorate, on the speaking circuit. There's a tendency to have a little private failure. And so my priority got wrapped up in my own ego. And the biggest, the saying, you become a prisoner of your own success. You at the point where you're going and you're going and you're going, it's hard to stop and say, hey, I need help, or things are unraveling, or things are falling apart. I'm doing just enough this to ruin this, and I'm doing just enough this to keep this mediocre. And I think, it's not about balance being, equal time, it's about harmony. And so really my biggest failure, right, personally, was not investing in my primary ministry, which is my household. Which is not taking care of Jerusalem first before I went out to make disciples. And so, I'll dispense with all the biblical references, but I think there's power in understanding our limitations as men if things are not right at home. So, talking about mental toughness, father of two young Black men and one on the way sooner than later, it was important to me that children mimic, whether it be me coming in the afternoon and taking off my shoes and them putting my shoes on, or me going to the dining room table and them with my laptop, right, after working, 10 hours, and them going to their rooms, getting their tablets and laptops and sitting right next to me. They are watching, right? And grandmama said it this way: your actions are so loud, I can't hear anything you're saying. And so biggest failure was almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me, which is my life partner, my spouse, who allowed me as the matriarch of this household to go out and to save all the kids, so to speak, and to mentor the young educators. And so I had to pause on life. I had to get my priorities in order. I had to salvage the foundation of which allows me to build for the community and realize that no matter what I do in life, professionally or otherwise, that my biggest legacy, my biggest impact on this world for SaJade, this is my statement, this is the I statement, is the children that I raise who can take wherever I leave off and take it to the next level, who can exceed the bar that I have set for them because of the investments I strategically made in them. That is my legacy. This is my ministry and labor of love, but that is my true calling, and that's my true legacy. And so the failure is when that almost unraveled right before my face, not because of infidelity or finances, any of those things that we typically want to blame it on, but because of ego and lack of prioritization.
I mean, I think everybody's making some really good points, and I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Erika, similar question. Like, you're successful as well. Can you talk to us about the struggles that you faced personally and how you've overcame, and talk to us about your mindset? Give us a little insight.
All right, that's interesting because we always talk about, when we meet people, we always talk about success, but it's so true, Dr. Miller, that we have those situations in everybody's life, and one of the most important things for us to develop mental toughness is to fail. And I failed in many things, professionally, personally. But one of the things that I believe that was the most prominent was when I was younger. I wouldn't ask for any help. I knew everything. Talk about being Asian, right? Mental toughness. I'm half Asian, so you can imagine knowing everything. Don't need help from anybody. And at the end, you realize that we live in a society that you need that social. Not that I didn't have friends, but you need that social interaction where you open up, and then you share your struggles, and then you get input from others. And this was something that I started doing after realizing, as you grow older, you see those things. And I really wish that I have learned that while in school. I really wish I had that practice while in school, because I wouldn't have to go through all of this process in decades of my life. And then to realize growing older that I needed to change that. So not asking for help, and then realizing you got to ask for help in all areas of your life. And then when I started doing that, I did unimaginable things, even professionally, such as writing a book, right? So when you start opening up, you do unbelievable things. And that's an invitation for everyone to make sure that you always ask for help.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna ask to the other two brothers on the panel, same question, because I think this is important that people see you as people, just not professionals, and to see where things are hard for you behind the scenes. And because when we're out, and like Brother Brown, you're out and you're on blast all the time in front of all these schools and all these people. And by the way, you're an amazing speaker. And so the brother does his thing. You really should look him up. But I say that to say behind the scenes, we all have struggles. We all have our stuff. What kind of stuff do you deal with, and how do you overcome it? And then coming to you next, Brother Holder.
Absolutely. I'm in the Brother Miller, thank you so much. I'm in the space where anytime I'm on stage, I'm always in the audience as well. I'm very transparent with the young people, the teachers, and the parents that I serve daily, whether it's virtually or in person. I'm very transparent by letting them know I grew up my entire life in special ed. I was labeled special ed. I was labeled at risk. I grew up with two mothers, two fathers, brothers and sisters on both sides, blended family. Born in Savannah, Georgia, raised in Jamaica, Queens, New York. Going back and forth, dealing with the blended family. Lost a brother to sickle cell anemia, still standing. Lost a sister to the AIDS virus, still standing. My wife and I have lost two babies, but we have an awesome 26-year-old son who works for the Southern Education Foundation and the Georgia Senate, a graduate of Savannah State University, my alma mater. My son's name is Keon J. Brown. And so my mother, 77 years old, 45-year retired educator, battling Alzheimer's disease. We are co-caretakers. I lost one of my dads in February. I'm saying that to say all of this. People, and Brother Miller, you know this, both Brother Millers, people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And so even when I'm addressing those individuals to help them be, mentally tough, to help them, be tough-minded, to build them, that tough-minded, the mindset of being tough-minded and being resilient, I tell them my story. I think one of the most powerful things we can do, one of the most relevant things we can do is be transparent. Be transparent. And Brother Miller, one of the things I would like to say before I turn the mic over to Brother Holder real fast is one of the greatest lessons I learned is when my son, who's a Chicago Bear fan, and I'm a New York Giants fan, and we sat on the couch watching games for many years together. But the most effective couch we sat on is the couch where we sat on when we were meeting with our therapist. When my son cried on my lap and I cried on his. When my son held me and I held him. And I allowed my son to face his fears, but we went to a therapist, and many times, and many times I grew up and they would say, just pray about it. Just pray about it. You don't need any outside help. Just pray. No, Black mental health matters and mental health matters. And so I was the interruption in the bloodline. I had to break that generational curse. And now I even take nephews and sit on the couch with them. And now I even take students and scholars and sit on those couches with them where they can get that help, that social emotional learning. They can talk to a counselor, someone who can help them be mentally tough, resilient, love them. And so that's one of the greatest impact that I think I have in overcoming and having my son help me to overcome is that we share the same therapist, and my son and I were able to heal together. And I think that's so very important. If we're going to build perseverance and the see it through mentality in our children and young people, all of them, but primarily our Black and brown boys and girls, we have to stop prescribing to the old way of, as someone said, sweeping it under the rug, because the more you sweep it under the rug, the dustier it gets, then that leads to disease or a dis-ease. So definitely, I step out to be transparent first, and I share my story. So then they're not looking at Keith L. Brown, Mr. I'm Possible, but they're looking at the special ed boy who persevered, who was resilient, and now who's able to have the nerve to serve.
All right, Brother Holder, what about you? Personal struggles, how have you overcame them?
Definitely, I love what everyone has stated. My personal struggle is, being from the hood, being from Inglewood, definitely a lot of the killing in Chicago is in Inglewood. That's where I came from. The Lord protected me. So I love our people, and it frustrates me when we're not pursuing academic excellence at a high percentage. And so I struggle with how hard do I push? How hard do I criticize? How can I find that balance of encouragement, but yet putting pressure on this generation? Because, of course, I believe Jesus Christ, number one, education, number two. I believe you got to have them hand in hand. And so I struggle with finding that balance, not being overbearing, because if you're being overbearing, you can push them totally away. But then also, I love what Erika said about when you fail and you overcome it, it can help you mentally. And I hate to say this to my team, at Oklahoma State University, I'm pledging Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And man, I flunked my final and cost accounting 2 that stopped me from graduating, and that was very, very, very devastating to me, very humiliating for my family back in Chicago, looking forward to coming to Stillwater, Oklahoma in May. And I had to tell them, I got to go to summer school in May. And so I had to gather myself. I had to figure out what I did wrong. Number one, I did not prioritize my time when I was pledging. So I could not blame it on the fraternity. It was on me. And so what I had to do was organize a plan to make sure I could get through cost accounting 2 in the summer. So I developed my plan. I went and visited my professor, Dr. Hanson. I still remember his name. and the Lord saw me through. And then one other unfortunate tragedy, I married and I hit our daughter, first child, with our car for her second birthday. And the Lord allowed her to go home. That was very, very tough mentally. Definitely the Lord helped me there, but there were some practical things that I had to do along with my wife to develop mental toughness to see it through, to the point now I'm able to, and my wife are able to bless other families who lose children at a young age. So I believe I learned, I did not protect my daughter. I learned from that failure, to be more conscious, more safe conscious, and not to be negligent, because we have, the Lord blessed us with another daughter, and she's now married and has a granddaughter. So I make sure I have precautions with my grandchild who's 18 months old. But then also, I'm able to try to bless others from my mistakes. And that's where the transparency comes in. That's why I can share with you, whoever online, that yes, I hit my child. The Lord allowed my child to leave. But I'm mentally stable to be able to minister to others, to counsel others in that way. And then those who flunk in school, I let them know that ain't the end of the story. There's some call some school and just do a better job there. So, but definitely find balance and challenging without crushing. And that's where I struggle with trying to find that balance, because I want all races to do well, but definitely when you look at how African Americans are we doing academically, particularly our boys and now our girls, we have to push them, but not break them. And that's where I'm in a constant struggle. How hard do I push?
Right, and I think what I hear all of you guys have said to an extent is that failure is good. And I think sometimes, especially kids are afraid to fail. They're afraid to show that weakness, but it's not weakness, because it actually means that you're strong, because you're able to get yourself back up, dust yourself off, and do it again. It's not failure until you quit trying. And so it's getting them to realize that and kind of internalize that. But with that being said, open this up to anybody. When was the last time you failed at something, and how did you handle it? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll jump out there first, and I'll say if you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough. That's what I tell my children all the time. You know, college athlete, you know, you do that, you're doing the bench, and you go to failure on that last set, and then when you fail, you begin to do negatives, and then that's when you really build the most strength. And so, last time I failed, I'll be very transparent. You know, the term charter is and it means different things in different regions. And recently, you know, I was the chief school officer for it. I've been in traditional ISD schools for the duration of my career, been wildly successful, but I wanted to do something different. I want to have a different type of impact. So I went the charter route, and from the beginning, the application, the building of the team, X, Y, and Z. And so we went through that process, and despite a phenomenal score in the blind rating, politically, there was no political will for the approval of my application. So after raising substantial amounts of money and really having one of the best boards, I think, in the county that I live in, we were unsuccessful. We were denied, we were vetoed, and we're not able to progress despite solid balance sheets, you know, outstanding philanthropic investments, a solid curricular plan, startup, et cetera. The work even had a site, 4 acres secured, and we're ready to break ground on the building. And so that was a pretty devastating moment. And that was September the 11th, 2020. And there was a pause. There was a moment in between that failure where, and that's the trick, right? That's when your phone starts ringing. Oh man, I'm so sorry for you, but really there's something in it for him, right? You know, so have you ever thought about, you know, I need a deputy superintendent of X, Y, and Z, or have you ever thought about coming into sales? Have you ever thought, you get all these calls and you get all these distractions of professionally, you know, you should do this and I'll hire you for that. And you scratch your head and say, but I know I have this vision here, and in my gut, my heart, this is what I should be doing. But that failure, that fear of failure almost tricks you to take this route. And this route might even be more lucrative in the interim. And so you can sort of rationalize that in your head, but then you step back and you stay the course. And this year, recently, last year, we were approved in June to open enrollment charter schools. And it was a very difficult and fierce and tenacious, and had to rewrite the entire application, by the way, and go through the entire process. There was no grace for going through it, but that was a professional, quote, failure that did not make me a failure, but that was a failure that only fueled the desire to execute and act upon the God-given vision that I had to serve and have greater impact for the students in the community from which I have benefited from. So that was my most recent. And it went out, I'm saying it now as if it's roses and rainbows, but it was deep, it was dark, and it was tough around September, October, November, December of 2020, if I can be frank. I
just hear a story of continuance and overcoming and not succumbing to the pressure of failure. Erika, when was the last time you failed at something?
It's interesting, the conversation that we're having here, Dr. Miller, because it has to do with mental toughness, right? Because mental toughness, at the end of the day, is your courage to jump into the unknown, as SaJade was telling us. So you jump into the unknown, not knowing what it's going to happen. However, you have a clear goal. You know what you want, and you're going to you find a way to get there. So then failure becomes just a hurdle that you go through. So for me, it was when I was trying to publish my book, it was very difficult. I got a lot of no's into the process of submitting that to publishers, lots of no's. And every no, I would say, I wouldn't feel bad. I would say, fine, I'll go to the next one and the next one and the next one, to the point that it took me a process of 1 year. You know, for a first time author is really tough, really, really tough. Besides the years that it took to write the book. So, and the thing that, you know, the conflict, the inside conflict is, oh my God, I know this can help a lot of teachers, a lot of students, a lot of people. What do I do to make that happen? And with that goal, you keep on trying and trying and trying until this year, January 29th, we got the book published. So
Congrats.
Lots of failures, lots of hurdles on the way, but because you know that you have a clear objective, you're gonna get there. You're gonna find the way. Somehow it's gonna happen.
So I heard you got to find a way. So I keep hearing these like championship mindsets, like believing anything is possible, and meeting that instead of, and leaning into the fears instead of giving up when things seem like it's in its darkest hour. So what does it mean to see it through for you, Brother Holder, Brother Brown? What is in the darkest hour, you know, what does that mean for you?
To me, it simply means you can't give up, you know, and definitely, y'all know I'm a pastor, so definitely you have to walk by faith and not by your sight, you know. And I would say this, and if you don't mind me sharing this, team, you know, Fallbrook Church, we went down to Austin, Texas. First time we did not receive the charter. We were kind of like Dr. Miller. Second time we went back, we had to redo everything, we got it. But we really didn't understand what we were doing. So we got 3 strikes and then we lost it. So it seemed like a failure, right? But then we found another charter school, people who knew what they were doing. You know, we had to write hard, but we just didn't have the expertise. And so we have responsive education out of Grapevine, Texas. They're on our campus, K through 12 with athletics. And now we have Lone Star College on that campus. So that was devastating to us. Number one, when we first got rejected, definitely was devastating to us when we lost it. So we got 2 blows, 2 knockout blows, but we saw it through. And so now, as I stated earlier, you can have an 18-month-old baby that can stay on our campus and get an associate's degree or a trade school degree, and you don't leave our campus. That's what you call seeing it through.
Brother Brown?
You may fall, but fall still fighting. Don't give up. Whatever you do, eyes front, head high to the finish. See it through, see it through. You may fall, and I may fall, but I'm going to go down fighting. Don't give up whatever you do. Can you imagine failing and you have to keep your eyes front and your head held high? Can you imagine failing? Can you imagine living in a society where your intelligence, people are shocked that you're articulate, people are shocked that you're intelligent, even as a Black man going into school districts across the country and across the world, and they're shocked. And so that in itself, when you have to fight that daily battle, when you have to prove that you're just as intelligent as others, and I'm still seeing it through. You know, some people prescribe to fake it until you make it, but I prescribe to don't quit it until you get it. And that's what I tell young people. because if you fake it until you make it, even when you make it, you still fake. And so that's why I say don't quit it until you get it. So when you see it through, and if I may get even deeper, when I pledged the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, winter of 1988 at the Mighty Alpha Gamma chapter at the Savannah State University, there were 6 of us. It was 6 the hard way. Even when I wanted to give up, I had my line brothers there to pick me up. We picked each other up because there was a different time when one of us wanted to give up, but we were there for each other. So we must still coach, train, and educate and nurture our young people that the company you keep will determine the levels you reach, that they need to surround themselves with individuals that will help them to see it through, help them be mentally tough, help them not to give up, help them not to give in. And so when I think about that, man, it's so important. And then, Brother Miller, I just want to say this real fast, man. These 4 affirmations that I give young people every day: I can, I will, I must, and I got this. And I can simply means that they are able. So we come out here, Brother Miller, real fast. They come out and they're like this, man. They come out there like this. Y'all know y'all hear the music on this global minded. I know y'all hear the music. Y'all got to go with me, and this is how I do it right here. 1, check it out. 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, and I can, I will, I must, and I got this. I can, I will, I must, and I got this. And so when we do that, man, and we give them those 8 affirmations and they start rocking to the beat. So now I have their heads, and they start jamming. And then I can means I have the ability to accomplish this task. I will means I'm not going to give up, because we teach young people how to be intentional about their learning and their success and their why. But here's the most important one: I must. We teach them to find something outside of themselves that's important to them. What's more important to you? What outside of yourself is important? Some of them say my mom, my grandmother, my parents, my siblings. I want to be the first one in my family to graduate from college. So we teach them their why. And when they say I must, and then the last one is I got this. Once those young people know their why, they will see it through. They won't give up, and they'll be able to say I can, I will, I must, and I got this. And that's how I was able to do it, man. That's how I was able to see it through, because I knew what my calling was and my God-given purpose. So that's how I've been able to see it through.
Dr. Miller, Dr. Miller, may I interject here? So many times failure is in our heads, right? We need to be conscious of that. It's not because something did not happen today that it's not going to happen tomorrow. And that's something that I love about Mr. Brown, about the way that he talks to kids. When he asks kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Dr. Brown, can you give us an example of that?
Oh, yeah.
A story.
Yes. I always tell children and young people, anytime an adult says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Your response should be nothing. And they're going to look at you real strange. What do you want to be when you grow up? Did you say nothing? Yes, nothing. Because the world doesn't need any more wannabes. I am a lawyer. I am a doctor. I am an engineer. I am an entrepreneur. I'm going to name it, claim it, and frame it. So when you say that, name it, claim it, and frame it, to name it means you call it. You speak those things, right, Dr. Holder, that are, right, that are not as though they were.
So they were. How are you?
Right.
You speaking Bible, speaking Bible.
That's right. When you claim it, you go do the work. And then when you frame it, that's when you walk into your destiny. So we have to stop asking our children and young people, what do you want to be? And start asking them, what are you? And we have to stop saying, are you going to college? And start saying, what college are you going to? And that could be a 4-year college or university, a 2-year technical college, a 2-year community college, or a 2-year trade college. Not trade school, trade college, because anything post-secondary is college. So let's stop saying I want to be, and let's change it to the great I am.
Very good.
Talk about seeing through.
That's so
and mental toughness.
As we're wrapping up and we're closing, I want to give everybody like 60 seconds closing statement. And I want you guys to think about one thing that you want to leave young people with about improving their ability to see it through, about improving their ability to be mentally tough, about changing the way that from a fixed mindset to a championship mindset, that anything is possible. So 60 seconds, give me one thing, And I'm gonna start with SaJade.
Yeah, I think one thing for mental toughness for me is understanding your why. I think you said it. I think you said it before. If you know your why, you can endure any kind of how, no matter what you go through. So I think it's important for students to understand what's your why. What are you fighting for? And once you're able to articulate and reflect on what you're fighting for, I think the journey may be different. And I think it's healthy to ask others why when given a request. And I think it's important to also be able to understand and articulate your why when you're asked that same question. So my biggest piece of advice, and I tell even my biological children, like, why? Tell me why. And they'll tell me, and they'll be able to rationalize. But I think there's power in understanding why we do the things we do, why we fight for the things we fight for, and why we abstain for the things that may not align to our why, our reason for being, our passion, and what anchors us in the fight and what propels us despite the obstacles that we may face. So what is your why?
Thank you. Erika, 60 seconds.
Building on the why, it's very important indeed. However, don't be discouraged if you do not know your why yet. Yeah. But the most important thing while you don't know yet is to take action. So Jack Canfield is a renowned author, best-selling author. He says one of the most important principles for success is taking 100% responsibility for your life and your results. So it's your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of your teachers, not of your parents, not of anybody else, not of your friends, not of your how many likes you get in Facebook, but it is your responsibility to take action every day.
Brother Holder, 60 seconds.
What I would tell young people is, and I'm gonna modify this Bible of verse, whatever a man or a woman thinketh, so is he or she. So why, I agree with Erika, is not, you may not know your why, but think with confidence. I grew up not thinking I could go to college. That was not on my mindset. I happened to play athletics, got a basketball scholarship at Oklahoma State University. That changed my way of thinking. So a boy from Inglewood High School, Southside Chicago, has 3 degrees, 2 bachelors, a Master of Divinity, and working on a doctorate in ministry. So again, as a man or a woman thinketh, so is he or she. So just think big until you find out for sure what you want to do. God bless you.
Brother Brown, 60 seconds.
I tell children and young people to go from impossible to it's possible to I'm possible. The impossible are all those people that doubted you through the years. So you have to stop doubting yourself and you got to move away from impossible. It's possible is when you start telling yourself it should happen, it can happen, it may happen, but you can't stop there. You have to go to I'm possible. And when you go to I'm possible, that's when you're taking responsibility and accountability and ownership for your future, ownership for your destiny, ownership for your purpose. And the difference between impossible and I'm possible is one little thing, and it's called an apostrophe. And when you take that apostrophe and put it between the I and the M, impossible becomes I'm possible. So I tell them, do some little things in your life that's going to make a big difference. And it starts with changing your attitude.
So I definitely, and just to close all this out, you know, the way you think is the way you act, and the way you act is what you attract. So, you know, I'm going to really share the GOAT mentality from arguably the greatest ball player of all time, Michael Jordan. So he said, I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And so your failures will lead your successes. Don't let those be your excuses. Let them be your reasons, people. So I want to thank Global Minded for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion. I want to thank the guests, Erika, for hosting us today. You know, I just appreciate everybody who was here, and I'm hopeful that somebody heard something that will help them continue to grow their mindset. So again, thank you all, and I wish everybody a good night.
Thank you. Honored to
Thank you. Be empowered. You all are great. Thank you so much.
Y'all are superb. Thank you. It's an honor to be with all of you.
Likewise. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, though. I want to make sure I get that in before we leave.
All right, brother.
Hey, you
Everybody makes
you
mistakes.
can't win them all.
That's right.
All right, love y'all.
Thank you.
Love you. Good job. Good job. Be empowered, everybody.